I think language matters when we are talking about people who are unhoused. I use
Mm.
unhoused or experiencing homelessness. And one of the reasons why I use unhoused or experiencing homelessness is because homelessness itself is an experience. It's not a person's identity.
Mm.
And I want to be very clear about that because when we call someone a homeless person, we kind of risk reducing them to their condition rather than humanizing their full humanity.
Mm.
And, I think society kind of conditions people to see people without homes or unhoused people or people experiencing homelessness through this socially constructed idea of being someone who is criminal or lazy or social problems or worthy of being publicly sanitized.
What's up? What's up, Hardly Typical podcast subscribers and listeners? We are back with season 3 of the podcast. Can I just drop like some applause or something in there?
Yes.
We are back. Season 3. Dr. Lee, how you feeling?
Season 3? What? I can't believe it's been that many seasons already.
Yeah. I'm excited because we got a lot of guests this season. You guys have let us know that you enjoy us bringing the guests on. So a lot of guests this season, and we just want to jump right in because I have one of my good friends, actually one of my role models, somebody that I try to pattern my ministry after. He's done a lot of great work. He's well known in the Atlanta area and in the country for the work that he's done. And so, Hardly Typical podcast listeners, we want to welcome to the show in our first episode of season 3, Dr. Terence Lester. Applause. Yes. So before we jump in, I always like to say to people, full disclaimer, full disclosure, Dr. Lester and I are friends. There's an interesting thing about this. Last year, for the I can't remember the name of the organization, but we were both nominated for Author of the Year.
Oh yeah. BCI, I think.
BCI, yeah. Black Christian Influencers. Yeah, that's the name of the organization. Yeah. And so I was getting like a lot of people who were conflicted because they know both of us.
Right.
And they're like, I want to vote for Dr. Lester and I want to vote for Dr. Hardwick. And I said, so I had to make a post. Listen, we're actually friends. And I put up a picture of us in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So I'm like, listen, it's a win either way because I really appreciate his work. And so, don't feel like you have to be loyal to me if you want to vote for him because we're actually friends. So it's not a competition.
Right.
But how you doing, Dr. Lester?
Man, I'm present. I'm here. And let me just say that I'm extremely grateful to be here with you all for season 3. That's a huge accomplishment. But brother, I am deeply grateful for your friendship. And I echo those sentiments when you talk about the voting thing. I had people inbox me. I was like, just vote for both of us. It doesn't really matter. Like, I think,
shout out to BCI.
Shout out to BCI. I'm just grateful to serving at this moment in time alongside you. And Dr. Lee, it's a pleasure to meet you. So I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah, appreciate it.
We're excited to have you, sir.
Yeah. So let's dive in and have this conversation with Dr. Lester because he's done a lot of great work, but we kind of want to set some things up. So I know you wanted to ask a question and kind of set things up, Dr. Lee.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sitting here amongst two Black Christian influencers. So we know that there are
three. Don't discount yourself.
Right.
Hey, I'm just happy to be in the number. Okay. So as I am sitting amongst you both, I know that there are other Christian influencers who are watching who want to make sure that they are informed in this conversation that we're having. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Lester, you are known for your work with the homeless. So what I want to know is I want to make sure I am using the correct term. I've heard homeless. I've heard unhoused. I want to make sure we're being respectful and maintaining people's dignity. So can you give us, just before we dive into the conversation, give us a quick education on terminology and what's acceptable, what's unacceptable? How can we make sure we are maintaining people's dignity and respect in our language?
Yeah. Firstly, thank you for a very important question. I think language matters when we are talking about people who are unhoused. I use unhoused or experiencing homelessness. And one of the reasons why I use unhoused or experiencing homelessness is because homelessness itself is an experience. It's not a person's identity. And I want to be very clear about that, because when we call someone a homeless person, we kind of risk reducing them to their condition rather than humanizing their full humanity. And, I think society kind of conditions people to see people without homes or unhoused people or people experiencing homelessness through this socially constructed idea of being someone who is criminal or lazy or social problems or worthy of being publicly sanitized. And sometimes we forget that a person experiencing this plight is just as worthy as anyone else. And I do want to mention a dear brother who recently lost his life in the city of Atlanta by the name of Cornelius Taylor. He was a young man, and the city kind of mobilized a an encampment enclosure, and without checking the tents, city workers bulldozed his tent while he was still in it, and he lost his life. And so it's really important to not just connect it to language, but language also informs how we behave or treat people who are unhoused. So thank you for that important question. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for that explanation and that education. I'm so sorry to hear about that gentleman and the loss of his life. I don't understand. Wow. But definitely thank you for bringing light to that and speaking his name in a public venue so that we can maintain that memory and have some respect for people who are experiencing homelessness.
Right.
Yeah.
So that go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lamar.
No. I just want to say that I echo Dr. Lester because language is important. And I know that's, part of the intersection between the work that you and I do, because we also talk about disability and understanding the proper language and what's acceptable, and so for us that's something that we also value very highly in our community, and try to make sure that, because it all boils down to, like you said, maintaining the dignity of persons, and not necessarily using, some of the social constructs that have been used to dehumanize people.
Yes.
Breaking away from that, starting with language. So I appreciate that. One thing I do want to get into, because, we introduced you as Dr. Lester, and you are, and I should say that Dr. Lester, or my good friend Terence, actually was a person who encouraged me to go do PhD.
Oh, wow.
So I have a doctor of ministry, but I remember us kind of DMing each other, and you said, man, based on the work that you do, I think this would be a good program for you. And I took your advice. And so the picture that I put up encouraging people to vote for either one of us was actually taken at a residency, a PhD residency. Your last one, actually, before you graduated.
Yeah.
So because you have a very important and interesting application for your PhD and how you applied it. And so can you tell the listeners like what your PhD is in, sort of that journey, and why you chose that program? Because I know the answer to it, because we've talked about it, but I would love the listeners to know, because I think it's a very important connection between your work and your education?
Yeah. Well, man, yeah, so many intersecting stories. Man, I believe there's a thing that we used to talk about when I was actually in the PhD program. It was this whole debate of, are you a scholar practitioner, or are you just a regular academic? And the idea behind that was, we are engaging in academic work, right, to be informed about said interests or subject matter, to then go out and apply these scholarly ideas and concepts into real world applicable things, right, in community. And I was sitting there while this debate was going on one day, and I was like, I'm not neither, right? I'm a practitioner scholar, right? My work has informed my inquiry, right? To go and research, because I was immersed in community. And so I never really dreamt fully about being a scholar. It was just that I was so proximate to the community. I wanted to understand some of the deeper concepts and systems that actually creates barriers for those who I was working with in the community. And so that kind of like sparked my interest, because I have a personal story with housing insecurity, and then I'm working with this population, and I wanted to deepen my understanding. And one of the reasons why I chose the particular PhD program that I graduated from is because it had a social justice lens, right? It wasn't just a setting where you go and theorize and you read all of these abstract publications or journals, but it was something that you could literally have an interest in real time, and then create this socially informed idea, or develop some type of practice or practical approach to creating some type of social change in the world. And so I studied the history of homelessness, the origins of socially constructed ideas related to this population. I looked at how public policy actually dehumanizes those who are unhoused and strips them of their worth. And instead of just writing an academic dissertation, I chose to incorporate a documentary film where I went and shot a film, and I made that a part of my scholarly work, because I wanted to center the voices of those who are unhoused and not just write about their stories. Yeah.
Excellent. One of the things that I know that you became known for, and I think it spread to nationwide acknowledgement, is the Dignity Museum.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about that, and what was the what was the motivation behind creating that? And I know what it is, but if you can share with the listeners what it is, and sort of the motivation behind it, and maybe some of the impact that you've seen it make in the work that you do.
Yeah. So I co-founded Love Beyond Walls 2013 alongside my wife. And the whole goal was to be deeply committed to community and affirming the dignity of those who are unhoused, have been historically marginalized, experienced poverty, and or living with disabilities while experiencing homelessness. And that work started to attract a lot of people who may consider themselves volunteers or being deeply connected to our work. And so it was this idea of how can we bring people from, various social locations, whether you live in the suburbs or you live behind a building, together in community, and how can we create the type of community where people who are experiencing this plight can have some type of flourishing. And so with that, we started to get a lot of people who were too wrapped up in their privilege. And I'll never forget one particular day, we had a volunteer literally get into a full-blown argument with a community member. She had stayed up all night making sandwiches with her kids or whatever.
I remember
and
this story. Yeah.
she wanted to pass out these sandwiches. And side note, we should never use service to those who are poor and unhoused as punishment to our children. That's a whole nother side conversation.
Yeah.
But she shows up. This guy's coming through the line, and he declines. And he says, "Ma'am, I don't eat this, and I don't want it." And she gets into this whole ordeal, yelling at the guy, "You should be grateful." These whole things, making a scene in front of other volunteers. And it was in that moment that I realized that people show up for altruistic, charitable work, and it's all about themselves and their own sense of selfishness. And it's not really to be proximate and present with those who are going through the plight. And so I walk over, I kind of break it up, and I ask what was going on. And he says these words: "I cannot eat that because I'm living with a terminal illness and it would make me sicker."
Yeah.
And she breaks down crying. I mean, the whole nine, apologizing. But it spoke to two ideals, right? Or ideas that, one, just because a person is unhoused does not mean that they don't have agency. Right. So we have to respect somebody's agency. And two, that people needed to be educated about the varied or diversity of experiences that people have coming into this plight. And so sometimes social stigma, without being proximate to someone who is going through this plight, can form these ideas of what you think a person should be or how they should show up while they're going through that experience. And I wanted to create a space, which is the Dignity Museum, that educates people about the realities of those who are suffering with this plight. And so this whole museum experience centers the stories of those who are going through from all walks of life, right? And we retrofitted a shipping container, and it was labeled as the first museum in the United States that represents this subject. And so in the past 5 years or so, we've seen a little over 35,000 guests.
Wow.
It's been dropped on college campuses, on business campuses. We've had people travel from all around the country to visit. We've led groups to develop like really empathetic understanding of how we should be in solidarity and proximate to this population without stripping them of their voice and their visibility and their story. So hopefully this experience I know it has actually inspired people to start projects and be more committed to their community involvement. It's led to some cities implementing ideas. It's helped politicians who are in spaces of power rethink their approaches to implementing policy. It's done a lot of empathy building, I would say. And it's probably one of my most meaningful contributions is how can we, I'll say it this way. I read a quote one time that says, we don't have to teach people how to be inhumane towards others. We have to start teaching people how to be humane towards their neighbors. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. That's it's really good. I know I have admired that. I think actually the first time we met in person was at Tri-Cities Church in East Point. I had just become the pastor. And I think Tri-Cities, either that year or the year before, they do something called the Big Give, and I think they had contributed to that project. And so I was like, wow. And I have known people who know you, like my good friend Pastor Broderick Santiago.
Pastor B. Shout out to Pastor B too, because he actually stood with me when I did my father's eulogy last year. He helped me to officiate his funeral.
Yeah, shout out to Pastor B. So we know a lot of the same people, but that was the first time I met you in person. It was just like, I like this brother. Like I like what he's doing. Um, so Dr. Lee, I think let's maybe transition into, because for the people who don't know, and this is part of our tagline, and we say this all the time, that this show is about intersections and insights. And so one of the things I know that was a question that I think it's kind of good to dive into now, because it's been mentioned a couple times in Dr. Lester's answers, is sort of this intersection between disability and the unhoused.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, because I know, Dr. Lee, we've had some conversations as we were preparing to bring Dr. Lester on, but there's some intersections there, maybe some things, some insights that you've seen, Dr. Lee, that
definitely.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, when I look at your dynamic work and the intersection of disability and homelessness, and unhoused persons. I want to make sure I say it correctly. Please forgive me. I'm learning as we do this.
Right.
So if I mess up, it is not because I don't care. It's because I'm learning. So forgive me for that. But the intersection of disability and the unhoused, what are some of the unique challenges you see that people with disabilities are facing?
Yeah, it's a really great question. If I can, I want to take a moment to introduce a framing that connects the experience of disability with the experience of homelessness. And so,
Sure.
Absolutely.
I have a podcast called the Imagine Dignity podcast. Every single guest on the show is a person who is experiencing homelessness. No celebrities, experts, influencers, none of that. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this was to center voices, because I asked this question: when was the last time you heard a person who is experiencing this plight talk about themselves at length? Right. And I was interviewing this friend of mine whose name is Melvin, is living with disabilities while also being unhoused. And off camera, he says, man, homelessness or not having access to housing is a disability in itself. And I say, well, what do you mean? And he goes on to explain, but then it started to make me make this connection that society can set up this population in a way that impairs their ability to function, right? If you don't have access to housing, you lose upward mobility.
Yes.
Right? You can lose access to healthcare without a permanent address, right? Which sometimes, in most cases, healthcare providers can refuse to treat you, and this becomes a public health concern. You lose access or mobility in gainful employment, right? Or access to education. You can be criminalized and publicly sanitized, right? And this all is what he was basically saying. You can essentially be disabled from receiving the type of support you need to move forward out of the experience of homelessness. And I just wanted to kind of set that up the frame, because it's all about this idea of who's deserving and who's not deserving, right?
Yeah.
When you are living with a disability, I want to firstly say that you're more likely to experience housing insecurity. As a matter of fact, when you're living with a disability, oftentimes it becomes worse. You think about access to supportive services or your basic safety of your body. I remember interviewing my brother on the podcast who actually had to have his leg amputated.
Yeah,
and he talked about the physical wear and tear on his body just from trying to get around
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes not getting enough rest, right? Because he's put off the train for having to sleep on the train because sometimes he doesn't know where it's safe to sleep. So he has to be consciously aware of his physical body. I've interviewed people who also talked about the lack of caregiving, right? As it relates to those who are experiencing homelessness. In 2022, I was in a major car accident. I actually live with a disability. I have all types of rods and stuff in my body. I take medication and it's hard for me to move around sometimes. And I think about my wife and my family and how they were active support systems for me. But if you can imagine not having any type of social support or caregivers, helping you with tasks like eating or dressing or moving around or giving you public transportation to and from, access to your doctors or whatever it is that you need, that type of support. And then there's this other conversation I was having where sometimes people who are unhoused living with a disability can be taken advantage of, right? If they're getting some type of financial support, sometimes family members can be so toxic that they would take financial means from those without an address because they're viewed as people who might be powerless, right? Healthcare discrimination, legal discrimination. And then there's this intersectionality of like, there are multiple identities. What if you're Black and you're unhoused? What if you're disabled and you're unhoused? What if you're just unhoused, right? And so you're navigating the intersectionality of all those things that can become an impairment towards upward mobility.
Yeah, that idea of being unhoused, being or creating a disability in and of itself is an important concept. I sort of delve into that in my last book where I talk about very early on the politics of desirability and how people who are desired oftentimes have access to services and relationships and those types of things that make their life easier, right? And so when you're finding yourself disabled or unhoused, you fall into that category of the undesirable. And if, as a matter of fact, there were laws. We talk about the intersection between the work that all three of us do. There are actually laws called the ugly laws that started out on the West Coast that spread. And the two persons that were targeted were the unhoused and the disabled. And so it made it illegal because they were undesirable, unattractive, unwanted to be out on the street. And, as somebody who does, like you said, research into public policy, that's one of the stains on Western culture and particularly American culture, where those two communities were criminalized. And it made it more difficult. The other thing I want to say is, and I realize this in watching your podcast and even listening to you right now, it's no secret that I've shared that I've been in a battle with cancer since 2020. At the end of 2023, I retired from pastoring because of the rigors of the treatment. And so I went on disability. One of the things I learned very quickly is what you're talking about is, being on disability can also create a situation where somebody becomes unhoused. And I tell my wife all the time, if I wasn't married, I'd be on the street because one, you have to not be working for 6 months. So you can't get any income for 6 months before you are able to draw disability benefits. And that's after the fact that it might take a year before they even approve your application. Mine happened to be fast tracked because of my cancer diagnosis. But basically, I wasn't allowed to make any money for 6 months. And I told a couple of people, I think the reason why they do that, and I was joking, but I was serious, is that by the time you get a little bit of money that they do give you, you feel like it's a lot because you weren't allowed to make any for 6 months. And
Right.
so, yeah, when you said that some of the structures and things and policies that happen can actually be more disabling, that came to mind. Like, yeah, like that's real, because if I wasn't married, I'd be on the street because the little bit that they give me is not even enough to find housing in the Atlanta area. I don't care where you go.
Right.
But also I had to have no income for 6 months. Well, by the time that you actually, if they do approve your application after a year and then you don't have income for 6 months, you've now been disabled and placed in a category of being unhoused. And I think it was very important. So I'd share that to say, as a personal experience, what you say is very important and very valid, because I'm reflecting on my own experience and like, yeah, that's true. Like, I would be on the street if I didn't have the support, like you say, my wife to take me to appointments, but even more so, just realizing that
emotional support, spiritual support.
Yeah.
Man. I feel, thank you for sharing that. One of the hardest things, that I experienced, I was hospitalized for a month, and just listening to you, and I still can hear there's a thing called medical mistreatment, right? You're in a facility. I was in the hospital, Grady. Great for, trauma care, but sometimes can be very, I would just say, horrible in terms of community care. Like, once you get committed to the hospital for long-term care, it can be very hard. There are a lot of people who are impoverished that frequent this hospital. And I remember being in ICU and hearing the screams at night, right? People who are begging for pain medication, people who are unhoused, most likely didn't have their family support, right? I remember times going through medical mistreatment where the nurses would smear their numbers off the whiteboards where I couldn't reach out to them, not giving me my pain medication. I'm reaching out to the front desk, being ignored. I still have video recordings of a nurse lying, saying that she gave me medication and she didn't. Having my wife to get out of bed at 1 a.m. because they would put out family members. I'm an advocate for those who are impoverished, and then having to find the strength within myself to self-advocate. And everybody doesn't have that inner strength to self-advocate, because it's a learned skill that you kind of pick up. And I just never forget being so perplexed. There's this reality that I have someone who can advocate for me when I can't advocate for myself. But then there are those who are impoverished, unhoused, living with disabilities, going through medical mistreatment, and they have nobody to be their voice.
Yeah.
And I feel all of the emotions, because these are real things that we don't consider. Who speaks for you when your voice has been silenced? Who stands in solidarity with you in your suffering when you don't have the strength to stand up for yourself? And that's what you're offering, brother. And I really appreciate the insight.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Just want to kind of sit with that for a moment, because those are very real experiences. And I know, Dr. Lee, we talk about that all the time. I know that probably resonates with you, because we've talked about advocacy, right?
Absolutely.
And having someone to advocate for you. So I actually want to pivot to you and kind of get your thoughts maybe on what.
Sure. Who speaks for you when you can't speak for yourself? That absolutely resonates with me and my personal experience with disability, and working with a population that can sometimes be fantasize that most people that are neurodiverse are geniuses. They're quirky geniuses, when that's just not the truth. That's just not the reality of the matter. Some people need advocates, and they need people to be their voice because they aren't able to articulate their feelings. Nonverbal people who are disabled, who have autism, who cannot articulate my pain or how I feel. So I hear you in that. And I have to ask this because I believe there are so many skills in life that can be taught. But one thing I don't believe personally is that you can be taught to love people and really advocate for people and really have a heart for people. You either have it or you don't. Now, you can be a nice person and you can say, I'll do this, but really having that heart for people to think about how they're feeling and how they're doing. Where does that passion come from for you?
Yeah. I have a friend who served as like a god for me. He's, or mentor, or whatever language you want to use. But I remember him sharing something with me years ago, and it was this thing called the pain continuum. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he sent me this diagram, and it shows a picture of like a person in duress experience some type of pain, right? And then the next space is like, you embrace the pain, right? And you explore the pain. And then you have this confession moment. And then after this confession moment, after you've embraced and confessed, it gives you a gift, right? And then after that gift, you give that gift to the world. And so it's this idea of seeing pain itself as a vehicle or an environment that can produce compassion. It's not post-traumatic stress. One therapist that is a close colleague and friend would say it can be, there's new studies on post-traumatic growth. You are asking what is being produced from this or as a result of this, not ignoring what happened or dismissing what happened, but looking at it in the lens that asks yourself, like, what is the growth thing that is coming from this? And so the personal experience for me is like, I'm constantly asking myself, how can I allow what I have gone through not to produce compassion? Every time I see a building, right, that is not ADA compliant, I'm frustrated because I know what it's like to be in a wheelchair and to have people mistreat me in front of my children and say that I'm moving too slow. I know what it's like to have restaurants tell me that we aren't able to seat you because we don't have any space for your wheelchair, and us having to go through the process of loading all this back up. And me, I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be labeled in K through 12 experience, and the educator did not know that I was tired in class because I slept in the night before. I know what it's like to go through those experiences, but I also know what it's like to have a God who restored me. I know what it's like for God to dwell with me in the suffering. And how could I not produce or have the fruit of compassion being produced from the pain that I've personally experienced? And so I think there's a unique compassion like that. We talk about Jesus and the cross, the passion of the cross, right? It produces, it's supposed to produce something in you. And so I would say that people who have not had the courage to explore the ways in which life has caused harm, even if it has not been of your choosing, that there's something there that you can explore that would inform the capacity that could be created inside your heart as you see others suffer in the world. As in simple terms, it says, the anonymous quote writer says, it can make you bitter or it can make you better.
Yeah.
And I think that
Very
is
good.
our choice to choose.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Very true. Absolutely. I love that. And I think you bringing up that passion for Christ. I think you bringing up the heart of Jesus and things we're ultimately supposed to seek. So then that definitely brings me to asking you, what do you think the Black church specifically, because we talk about the intersections of the Black church and disability, but we also talk about that's not always a two-way road. Sometimes it's a 3-4-way road. You may be dealing with,
Yeah.
experiencing homelessness. You may be
Yeah.
Black. You may be disabled. You may have hardships, socioeconomically. There's so many other intersections that you could be dealing with gender. So what do you think? How do you think the Black church can assist this population better? I know they're doing some great things, but what can we
Yeah.
do better?
My grandmother is about to turn 93 years old. Still walks 2 miles every other day.
Wow.
And I remember my exposure to the Black church, or the Black prophetic tradition, is rooted in our relationship. She took me to the Black church when I was 7, 8 years old. And I remember sitting in the pews with her, and her being a leader in the church and talking to me about the civil rights movement and how the Black church had created a space, started educational institutions where Black people could find a sense of leadership and have a safe haven from public sanitation when racist, hostile architecture, like signs that said no coloreds, right? Would be in plain sight. And she would talk to me about parts of town that she wasn't able to work in, some well-known established stores that people of color can frequent in present moment. She couldn't work in because she was born in 1932. And all of that kind of shaped my heart in understanding that to be in church and to have a theological understanding is not just to be personal, but it's also to be public, right? What is God saying about what is happening all around us, right? God is deeply concerned not just about our personal salvation, but what is happening in the world around us. And so she was also a pillar in my life that taught me that you can be Black and Christian, but mistreated for your Blackness and ignored for your Christianity. Right. And so I think these are some of the concepts that kind of ground this lens, right? I think the Black church has a unique opportunity, one, to rethink what it means to be wealthy, and to challenge prosperity messages of exclusion, right? There's some theological malpractice that's happening that we have to challenge, not in terms of just like talking about wealth in terms of money, but wealth is community, wealth is resources, where wealth is care for the most vulnerable of society.
Right.
And when we think about homelessness itself, 50% of those who are unhoused in this country are Black and brown people. And there are some systemic connections there, right? I think the Black church has the opportunity not just to see engagement with a population just under the mere auspice of outreach, right? But can be central to its mission, right? The Black church can, there's some churches up in New York that is building accessible housing units and pushing back against this idea of affordable housing, right? Because there are people who have salary jobs that can't afford affordable housing.
Right.
We need what we call accessible housing. The Black church has the opportunity to create ongoing disability access programs. What if a church actually said, we're just going to collect wheelchairs, right? There are people who are living on the streets right now that don't have the proper ADA wheelchair size or walker size, vision care. hearing aids, medical support. The Black church can introduce programs where it holistically reframes how we think about those who are impoverished and unhoused, and talk more about like a holistic approach. What if creating mental health support services, job support services, and this not just be seen as just an extension of ministry, but central to the ministry itself.
Right.
The Black church has always been known for this, and I think we're in a pivotal moment where it can do more. One example I would say that Wheat Street Baptist Church, we had a partnership with them through our organization, a historically Black church in the heart of the city. One of the initiatives they did in partnership with an organization like ours, they helped us launch this thing called Gather Atlanta, right? And the idea was to have people from all over the city, even out on the outskirts of Atlanta, to come together. And we created almost like this healthcare-esque type experience. People who are unhoused can get access to showers, medical care, access to disability support services, eye care. There were doctors who were donating their time to come and check the vitals, who were also Christians, who were also Black. There were people who would donate their time to come and just sit, who were clinicians, just to process real-time trauma with people who are unhoused. And it all happened in the Black church. But it was ongoing. It was consistent. It wasn't just a one-off type of thing. One of the reasons why we actually had to end that program, and I'm still deeply saddened, is because COVID hit. And we had been doing this for years, and then social distancing came into play, and we haven't been able to get that back up. But I don't know, man. I just say all that to say is I have deep respect for the Black church. I'm a product of the Black church, and the Black church can become a hub, a continued source of strength, which is it already is known for those who are most vulnerable.
Yeah, I love that. Because I'm also a product of the Black church, and I've often felt like the Black church, in a lot of ways, I think there's been some deviation from it, but in a lot of ways, the Black church has always been the conscience of America.
Yes, that's right.
I was actually having a conversation with someone the other day. It was related to disability, but we kind of spawned off into the idea, and I shared with them that had it not been for the Black church and Black bodies actually presenting an alternate theological interpretation of the Bible, you'd still have white Christians who were completely okay with owning people, right? And a lot of the justification for that came from what we now consider a heretical interpretation of the Bible, right? And so what I share with people is the largest, deconstruction is a big thing. And, people have different feelings on what I said, but the largest deconstruction movement in this country came from Black folks who said, we're not buying the way that you're interpreting the Bible. We're not less than.
That's right.
We're also made in the image of God. And I talk a little bit about that in my work about ableism and how it's not just a ranking of bodies, it's also a ranking of the bodies of work. And how sometimes the most robust theological views that are needed to change the way that society has structured itself have come from people on the margins.
That's right.
Particularly the Black church. I believe it's going to come from people who are experiencing homelessness.
Yes.
I believe different views of God and different interpretations of the Bible that are going to correct societal ills are going to come from the disability community.
Yes.
Because if we look historically, the most robust, again, views that have challenged societal norms have come from people on the margins. And I think that's a way that we need to continue as you've done, Dr. Lester, to uplift those voices. Like, yeah, I listen to your podcast. I love it because, like you said, there's no celebrities, there's no fancy equipment. It's just giving voice to the unhoused community. And I think that's where we're going to start to push back against societal ills and hear the experience of the unhoused. Jesus was unhoused.
Yes.
He said
foxes have holes.
Yeah.
Birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man,
has no place to lay his head, right? And so he was very much a person who provided an image, provided a new theological lens to society and also the religious establishment. And so I'm always a proponent of people who are doing the work like what you're doing and the work like what Dr. Lee does and what I do, because those voices are going to be the ones who help reshape the ways that we have gotten things wrong.
Amen.
Theologically, spiritually. So, before we wrap up, I kind of selfishly, and maybe I'm bragging a little bit, I've gotten a chance to get a sneak peek at your newest book. That's not even out yet. And so I'm kind of bragging here. Like I got it before y'all. It's kind of like, people who get the new J's before they come out. Right. But I know you've written a lot of books. So, before we end, where can people and I have all of them. I've read all of them. I've enjoyed all of them. I'm enjoying the new book.
Brother. Same, man.
But so where can people connect with your work, including your books and some of the other things that you've done? What's the best way for people to connect with that work?
Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you. And thank you for even, considering to endorse this new work. The book is called From Dropout to Doctorate, Breaking the Chains of Educational Injustice. And just talking about all of the challenges it takes for a person who is Black or brown, grows up in a concentrated, impoverished area, and the barriers that exist from that person going from, all of the traumatic experiencing homelessness, talking about myself, to accessing higher education. And we don't think about all of the hoops and hurdles you have to, just jump through to even find the stability to pursue such heights. I mean, Dr. Lamar, right? Dr. Lee. I'm pretty sure we all have our own stories of how hard it was to access higher education. And so I speak directly to that, man, and I appreciate you sharing. But if people want to reach out, TerenceLester.com, or if they want to look up our work with our organization, is lovebeyondwalls.org, and at Love Beyond Walls, they can find us on all social media.
Yeah. Let me just say, I'm only in chapter 4, but it's fire, people. The new book is fire. Definitely get it. Definitely get all of his other books. You also have a book that you co-authored with your daughter.
Oh yeah, Zion Learns to See. Book. Yeah. That's
yes.
Right.
Fire. Please, you have an opportunity even to help. And that book is about helping to educate younger people about the unhoused and having compassion. And yeah. Actually, my son, I have the book, and he was looking through it. He's like, "This is good." He's 11.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So
I appreciate
just
it,
so
man.
it has made an impact on young people. So before we wrap up, Dr. Lee, you got any closing thoughts, anything that you want to?
Thank you so much. This has actually been an amazing conversation, and I just appreciate your work. And as you move forward, I plan to follow you. I already am following you, and I just look forward to seeing all the amazing things you're doing, Dr. Lester. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank y'all. It's been really hard. It's just been a hard time, man. And this is the second podcast that I've done, and I'm grateful. I'm opening up and you give me space to share, man. So I'm deeply appreciative of your work, and thank you all. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope this is encouragement. Excuse me. I hope this is an encouragement to you that you're doing great work. So keep it up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I hope this is not out of line or inappropriate. I know you shared a little bit publicly, but just know personally, we're praying for you as you continue to grieve the loss of your father. I know that was, and I text you from time to time and say, hey, how you doing? I'm praying for you.
Yeah. It's a journey, man. And like I said, second podcast this year, and I felt comfortable with just being here with you all because of you personally reaching out to me, bro. Like I don't think you know how much that means to me as I navigate grief, which will be a ongoing journey. But I find strength in community like this. So thank you.
Yeah. So just know that, I'm going to continue to reach out our listeners. We're going to ask our listeners to, pray for you. And, but bro, I got you. Anything that you need.
Same, bro. Same.
Yeah. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. So listen, you know where to find Dr. Lester's work. I'm encouraging all our listeners to go out, get every book that he's written, including the one he co-authored with his daughter, Look Up, Love Beyond Walls, and the work that they're doing. And I'm even gonna encourage you, don't just look it up. Give to it, contribute to it, because it is amazing work and it's an important work. And so as we wrap up, man, as always, we say we're not just building a podcast, we're building a community. Amen. So we want to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts about the conversation today. So reach out to us on all our social media platforms, whether it's Instagram or Substack. Let us know what you think. Let us know about your own experiences. We're building a community. And so with that being said, as always, thanks for tuning in to the Hardly Typical podcast, and we will see you next episode.
Bye-bye.
Peace.